Prescott Gallery of Homes. I'm your host, Steve Irwin. Today we have Kirsten Olson with Lawyer's Title and Darren Wall from Wall Commode. And today's topic is about getting your offer accepted.
Which seems hard right now.
We're getting multiple offers, crazy offers, and so what are some of your thoughts?
I've actually had agents tell me that when they have their buyers writing letters to the sellers,
Nice.
telling them why they love their home and how this is something that they're going to live in and create memories for their family.
And that's a California thing. You know, we've
Is
seen
it?
that all the time. And when we were in California, we used to get those a lot. And so I do think that it makes a difference when you're emotionally tied to a house.
It did when I sold my house.
Did
Oh,
it?
Yes.
wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely made a difference.
Wow. And so what are some of the other things?
Some of the other things, prepare to go over asking.
You know, so a couple of months ago, when our inventory was way low, I mean, we're low now, but you know, several months ago, we only had 300 homes for sale.
I remember.
And we would get a full list price offer and sometimes over list price, but also an escalation clause.
Now, what is an escalation clause for people who may not know what that means?
Well, it just means that, you know, if a house is listed for 400 and you offer 425, but you're afraid somebody will come in and pay higher, you can escalate your offer up to higher if there's another competing offer.
Wow.
So you don't have to go back and forth.
You don't
It's
have to go
just-
back and forth.
It's already built in.
Yeah, and the last one I did, I think we went like 20,000 over the next highest offer. So,
Wow.
Wow.
Now, see, I believe I'm using local people, and I've
Mhm.
always used local agents whenever I bought or sold.
right.
Does that make a difference, especially in a market where it's a seller's market right now?
Well, I think so because the local agents know the market. And so we get out of area agents all the time. And they'll submit offers thinking it's a full price and it's a no-brainer. But they don't realize that we've already gotten multiple offers over list price.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, you need to probably use a local agent, definitely.
Now, I also know that you guys are required to do, when you do the offer, submit a pre-qualification letter.
And that's why
Darren's here.
Yes. Yeah.
What is a pre-qualification letter?
Well, Arizona actually is pretty unique with their pre-qualification letters. In most states, it's kind of a generic letter the lender does. In Arizona, it's actually a part of your real estate contract.
Right.
And it's something that the buyer is signing, whether they have a lender or not, they have to include it. If they don't have a lender, they still have to say, here's my form, I just don't have a lender.
Right.
So from the lender side, we fill this out.
Uh-huh.
And it gives some pertinent information so that the seller can make a decision about potentially the reliability of the buyer's financing.
Mm-hmm.
How far have they gone down this road? Are they making this offer just kind of on a whim and they're not actually sure they can finance it? Or have they really done their due diligence to make sure that the lender can perform and fund the loan? Because the last thing you want is a contract to fall out.
So have you ever gotten a call from the listing agent?
Yes, often.
What do they ask you?
They like to know, so there's certain things they certainly have a right to know. You don't get to know about the credit of the
Right.
buyer, you don't get to know about their job, but you do get to know how far they have gone down the road. Have they actually provided all their documents? Have they been reviewed? Have you checked? Have you actually pulled and reviewed their credit? Where are you in that process? Now the trick is that the lender's not, even though we fill this out because we believe in our client, we want to help them, technically the lender's not actually on the hook for what they fill
The
out.
pre-qual
Right.
letter.
Yeah, the pre-qual letter.
So you guys haven't run their credit and done all their checking, so I mean, it's,
No, we have, but what I'm saying is that like the lender is sort of voluntarily participating in this,
okay.
in this process as a part of the contract because they want to help out their client. But they're not actually, when they sign that form, if they theoretically didn't carefully do everything that were on there really isn't any repercussion. You can't come back to the lender and say, hey, you did this. I mean, the buyer's the one that's on the hook because if they if they misrepresented it, it theoretically could affect their contract, or their earnest money, but the lender can't really be held accountable. Now our goal is to make them look exactly the best they can, but it's something to keep in mind, because a lender who doesn't know the Arizona real estate contract, necessarily maybe a large national lender or something, they may be filling this out, not really realizing the implications for the buyer in the contract.
Well, wait, it's worse.
Oh, yay!
Because some of these places, the buyer can go in and just fill out a form online, just auto-generate a pre-qual. I've seen those, and man, my confidence in those is pretty minimal.
Well, and that brings another question. I'm sorry. Is basically if I'm a seller and you bring me a pre-qual, how do I look at that as an offer and say this is the best offer I want to go with?
Well, this brings us back to what's you brought up, which is the listing agents reaching out to the lender to ask some questions. Because just by making that call, the listing agent learns an awful lot to help and share. Did they pick up the phone and return the call? Number one, and how long did it take? How willing were they to provide the information that they are allowed to provide? And you get a good feel for the lender in having a conversation about the buyer. There are questions that a lot of times aren't asked that I would recommend.
What are those?
One of them is about appraisals, local appraisers. Right now in this market, we are really challenged with appraisals. There are only so many local appraisers available, and they're all so busy that they, for the most part, will not take an order from somebody they don't know.
Oh my goodness.
So we can get, like a local lender is going to have that relationship to be able to make sure a local appraiser is assigned, because once you get your appraisal turned in, if it's not a good quality or doesn't meet the value, or they didn't know how to comp it right because they're not from the area, they came out of a different area to do it, you're stuck with that appraisal, and that could have a real impact on your transaction. So the local appraiser piece is a really good question to ask. And then also, I think, like, how many, do you do a lot of purchase business?
Right.
Because once again, with these large institutions, it is an assembly line,
right?
And they kind of, a lot of them will set one group of people off to do only refinances, and then another group to do some purchases, but they maybe don't have the experience. They're kind of just focused on more generic transactions. Right. So asking kind of some of those questions about their experience if you don't know them, and then has that buyer been real responsive? Because I'm only as good as what they give me.
That's right.
If they're piecemealing stuff, they're not really on the ball about getting pay stubs or tax returns, or we're getting partial stuff, and it's like pulling teeth. Now you get a feel for that on the listing side if we're kind of like I'm not so sure. And I can tell you, there've definitely been transactions where I was struggling with my buyer to get what I needed, and had the listing agent asked, I think some of those questions, it maybe would have been helpful, because we ran into challenges later in the transaction.
Well, in one way, you get your buyer's offer accepted is if the offer matches the pre-qual.
Exactly.
Oh, what a concept.
Well, and so if it's conventional, what's the down payment on it?
So conventional can be as low as 3%, but the most common is your traditional 20% down for conventional.
And so if the listing agent doesn't know, if the pre-qual says 20%, you look at the purchase contract and there's not 20% down, then they don't align, and that's a red flag.
It is, yeah.
So I have a question. So we're seeing a lot of cash purchases. So how do you get a loan with the pre-qual approved by the seller? How do you present that?
Oh, you mean to compete with a cash offer? So cash offers usually want a quick close, and they want less than list price offers.
Oh.
Right, and because they think cash has a
King.
it's a thing.
Yeah.
But reality is, to the seller, all deals are cash, because they're still walking away with a check, regardless
true.
if the buyer finances or writes a check,
That's
right?
true.
So a good pre-qual with a good, intelligent offer
That all aligns.
that all lines will probably beat a cash offer. I mean, that's just how it goes. Cause at the end of the day, the seller wants a maximum return, you know, a fair market return on their property.
Right.
I have a little trick that I do too in
Uh-oh.
this situation if you want to. So I work a lot with video emails, and so if we've got that multi-offer situation, I just need to know the buyer's agent has to tell me, hey, that's what's going on. I'll do a short 1-minute video to the seller and the seller's agent of me as the lender saying, hey, just want to let you know this offer's coming in
Is that called
from my
a
buyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
But that's a
called-
great idea.
Yeah, and I
Excellent
tell
idea.
we've reviewed, assuming we've reviewed all their documentation, we know we can close on time or early, they're really excited about your house, it just gives kind of a personal touch, and they know someone's very proactive.
Well, I'm thinking about, I'm like, you got the letter that you're gonna write, and then you have him who's basically, you know, saying they're looking good. I mean, that makes me warm and fuzzy.
Well, and especially for someone that's known in the community that's respected.
True.
So that goes far, that goes a long way. So thank you for doing that.
It helps. I just need to know when the offer's going in, and then I'm happy to do it. And it just we want to stay at the top of the stack, you know.
That's right.
So
Now, we were talking about how to get your offer accepted.
Uh-huh.
So what about contingencies?
Well, I would say if you don't have any, that would be really good.
Because we all watch HGTV, and we
Uh-huh.
all see these beautiful houses, so now I want everything that's in that house here.
That's right.
And I want the seller to take care of that for me.
That's right. And so if you cannot have a contingency, that would be really good. If you don't have to sell something in order to buy something, that would be ideal.
it's another place financing for people who don't actually need long-term financing
Right.
can be a useful tool, because if you've got a contingency, you're right, it's going to make a big difference in a multi-offer situation. But we could do a traditional 30-year mortgage for somebody as long as they qualify, knowing full well they're going to pay it off when they sell their other home.
Absolutely. And you
That's
gotta
a
do
great
that.
idea, yeah.
And then they avoid the contingency on the offer.
Well, you know, you said something earlier that bank is part of your company name. So do you lend your own money? You have your own bank money?
We do. We also will broker in certain situations, but the majority of the time we use programs where we're lending our own money, and the main reason is because it gives us a tremendous amount of control over that process.
Absolutely.
We know the underwriters personally, the appraisers, all those people are someone that I've got a relationship with,
Right.
and if we need to pull some strings at the last minute to get something done, we can.
So we're starting to see where buyers are demanding closing right away. They're so
Quick.
anxious to get in here. And I know in your industry and my industry, that just puts a lot of stress on all the parties on the back end. Is that something that could delay or getting your offer accepted?
Well, and because a lot of times the sellers don't have a place to move to. So they have to go home shopping.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so they may not, if they don't have a go-to place, then that quick close is probably not gonna be accepted. And so I've seen clients accept lower than list price because the timing works for them.
Really?
And 'cause-
So if I was an agent and I was making an offer, should I call the listing agent and say, when's the good close date?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Call the listing agent, make sure you're connected with the lender. The lender's got everything they need to do a valid, what I call a valid pre-qual.
Yeah.
And a video.
And a video.
Also it says basically, and you tell me, because when we get it into escrow and you see it, it's sometimes we're missing documentation.
Right.
We're missing addendums, we're missing counters, and so we fall behind the eight ball trying to figure out what has been changed or renegotiated. Does that make a difference to the
I think
listing
so.
agents?
When we sit down and present multiple offers,
Yeah,
and the offer has the HOA addendum, it has everything complete, that just paints a way better picture than, you know, kind of a quickly thrown together offer. And so I've seen offers rejected because they just weren't complete.
Well, yeah, is that even like an offer? I'm not really sure.
Well, I mean, if you think
Yeah.
about the HOA addendum as part of the offer,
Mhm.
right? If it's in
Right.
an HOA and you don't have it, then there could be several thousands of dollars of transfer fees that
Oh,
the
that's-
client could be on the hook for.
Yeah, that's always the.
It's the same thing with that, with the pre-qualification. If now we've had people where they're applying for the loan at the same time because
Right.
they just fell in love with the place on the spot, and we'll do that pre-qual, you know,
Based on what they tell you.
and we'll leave the boxes checked. No, we don't have this stuff yet. But then I'll always call the listing agent and say, just so you know, they just got into contact with me. 24 hours from now, you'll have a new one of these with
Right.
everything checked. But we needed to get the offer in by the deadline, and you know, that kind of thing. And it puts a lot of, it sure makes the buyer have to jump. But
Right.
but if they do, that's great. That's what
They're
we want.
motivated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So is there a difference between a pre-qual and a pre-approval letter?
They are both kind of vague terms, and they are sometimes used interchangeably, but I would argue, yes, there is a difference.
Okay.
Technically, the form that we're filling out is a pre-qualification form, and being pre-qualified generally means they've done an application and we've at least pulled credit.
Okay.
A pre-approval in my world would mean we've also reviewed all of the documentation and we feel like we're ready to go to an underwriter. So it's a much higher bar, but we hear those terms used interchangeably all the time. So it doesn't necessarily mean something
But
to
it would
everybody.
mean to me, if I was the seller,
Absolutely.
knowing that I have a pre-approval letter versus a pre-qual.
But there's not really a place to call it a pre-approval.
Okay.
But as far as I'm concerned, there's a definite difference in the terminology. But from a contract perspective, it's just the one form.
Okay, so when you present an offer so that you can beat out the other competition, how do you designate that out?
Well, because we call the lender.
Okay,
And we would just want to see how far they've gotten. Did they pull credit? Did they verify earnest money, deposits? Have they talked to them about the rates and all that?
I'll tell you, the big one is usually income.
Right.
If a deal is going to fall apart later, probably 3 out of 4, maybe 4 out of 5 times, it has something to do with income qualifying and job history. So those are probably, I mean, they're all important.
Mm-hmm.
But when somebody's in love with a house and they thought they had to come up with $5,000 more than they thought, they'll probably find a way to come up with the $5,000.
Sure.
The deal probably won't die.
Mm-hmm.
If they thought they qualified based on their income, because they are maybe self-employed or something, and then after we did the analysis, that income was cut back, that's hard to fix.
Right.
So those are usually the ones where it truly falls apart.
Kind of follow up as we wind down a little bit. How important is credit? Buyer's credit?
You know, that is a good question. It certainly is very important when it comes to pricing, meaning rate and fees.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, it does have an impact on qualifying, but it's a lot of times it's more sort of either it's good enough to get in the box
Okay.
or not. So, and now that answer would have been very different 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
But these days, if we've got an average, even a little below average credit score, but they're okay with a higher rate,
Mm-hmm.
so they've got a little extra money for some fees, that kind of thing, they might be just as well qualified to get the home. They're just gonna use a program that's not as attractive to do it.
So if I have a client that's suffering from a bad credit score,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just no way they can do something now,
Mhm.
do you have a program that can rehabilitate their credit?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically I still do an application for those people. So even if, let's say you just had a bankruptcy, we know we can't do a loan today,
Right.
but you know you want to buy.
Right.
The best thing would be for me to still go ahead and get an application, and because then we can look at not only the credit piece and what needs to happen to bring the scores where they need to be, but also the other aspects of the file, because there's still 2 other aspects, income and assets.
Right.
So we want to have a plan in place. So those people, for me, usually 6 to 12 months before you want to buy, if you know you need some work on credit, is the right time to actually start talking to a lender,
That's
as
a
long
good
as the
point.
lender's going to help you.
Great point.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And you can tell them how much money they need to save too.
Exactly. And we're going to go, okay, so here's the bare minimum to get this program.
Right.
But if you want down payment assistance, here's our goal, or whatever the other goals might be. And we're going to start moving down this road. We just tell them, get all the ducks moving in the right direction. Someday we're going to be there. It isn't a question of if you're going to buy a home, it's a question of when, as long as you do what you need to do. They have to do the work, but they're some of my favorite clients,
right,
because it's so rewarding. They do the work, they get the home at the end of the day. We're helping them. The relationship is just really, really strong. You know, we've been working with them for 6 months or whatever. So.
And it's hard to go show a property without a good pre-qual.
Yeah.
And so we'll usually go look at one thing, but then we say we can't do anything else till we get that pre-qual done.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to waste their time or the seller's time.
No.
And those make great clients for the agents too, eventually, but we've just got to get them on a plan.
Right.
You know, yeah.
So how does someone give you a call? How do they contact you?
My phone number is 928-533-7473 or theron.wall@WVMB, as in Wallach Volk Mortgage Banker.com, or theronwall.com is my email or my website.
And you're probably on social media.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Nice. Hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure that you like and share our videos. Have a great day.